Hello, my name is Jackie. The night before I was supposed to fly across the world for my dream job, my sister smiled, led me downstairs, and locked me in the basement. She said, "You'll always be just a local." My parents? They knew. They watched. And no one came to open the door. They didn't just try to stop me from leaving. They tried to erase me entirely. But what kind of family plans your failure and calls it love? And what would you do if your own blood decided your success was the real betrayal? As I folded the chair myself and slid it back against the wall, I realized something. No one ever plans to leave a family until the day they understand they were never truly invited in. That dinner wasn't for me. It never was. It was supposed to be a small family meal. That's what Mom said. Just us, nothing fancy. I got off work late from the grocery store. My feet ached, my shirt smelled like lemon floor cleaner, and my back was tight from the last shipment run. But even through all that, I felt light, lighter than I had in years, because just hours earlier the email had come in. "We're excited to offer you the international program placement. Please confirm your attendance for relocation to Singapore." I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to see if anyone asked me how my interview went, but no one did. Instead, I walked into a dining room covered in soft pink and ivory decorations, flowers draped along the mantel, and a cake that read, "To brighter days, Seraphine." Her brand, her face, her colors. It took me 3 seconds to realize this wasn't a casual family dinner. This was a launch party for her new skincare line. Seraphine was glowing, of course. Full makeup, blowout curls, acrylic nails that clicked when she pointed at things. Her boyfriend Wes stood behind her like a well-trained golden retriever, holding a phone for live streaming. "Jackie," she called out with a toothy grin. "Grab a chair, babe. We're about to toast." There weren't any chairs left at the main table. Mom gestured toward the laundry room and said, "There's a folding one by the dryer. Just bring it in real quick." I carried it out like a maid pulling up a stool to her own firing squad. I wedged myself in between the sideboard and the wall, the metal legs creaking each time I shifted. The room smelled like dollar store candles and rosé. Dad raised his glass first. "To Seraphine," he said, "you've built something people admire. You're an example for other young women." Everyone clinked glasses. I sipped water from a cup I brought myself. Not a single word about my job. Not a single nod to the fact that in 3 days, I'd be boarding a plane halfway across the world to start a position I'd fought tooth and nail to earn. After dinner, Mom brought out small gift bags. One by one, they were passed around. Everyone got something. When I opened mine, there was a candle labeled S for Success and a handwritten note that read, "You've got this, Seraphine." They'd reused the gift bags from her influencer sponsorship drop. I didn't say anything. I folded the tissue paper, tucked the card back in, and placed it gently under my chair. It wasn't about the candle. It was about never being seen as anything other than the one who was supposed to clean up the mess. Because as soon as dessert was served, some coconut lemon concoction Seraphine insisted had no refined sugar, Mom turned to me and said, "Jackie, honey, could you do a quick rinse of the dishes, just so we're not waking up to chaos?" Before I could answer, Seraphine piped up from across the room. "Yeah, and make sure to spray down the counter. The lighting's awful when it reflects crumbs." I was still wearing my name tag. My fingers were raw from handling cardboard. And now they wanted me to rinse champagne glasses and scrub off frosting fingerprints before I'd even had a slice. So I stood up, took the dishes, and walked them to the kitchen. The faucet squealed when I turned it on, just like it always did. The sponge was old and soft, barely holding suds. I scraped the plates in silence, stacking them like little pieces of every moment I'd swallowed down over the past decade. From the kitchen, I could hear the laughter again, the kind that didn't need you in the room, the kind that told you they were fine whether you stayed or left. While drying the wine glasses, I heard Mom say, "Seraphine has such a gift. She just knows how to shine." And someone else, I couldn't even tell who, added, "She's the face of this family." My hands paused, still holding the damp stem of a glass. I wasn't crying. That part of me had dried up years ago, but something different crept in, a tightness, just under my rib cage, like a quiet warning bell that had been ringing for a long time, muffled by duty, by habit, by fear of being called ungrateful. I rinsed the final plate, turned off the faucet, and leaned on the counter. In that moment, I remembered high school, the art competition I'd won, the one no one came to. I remembered prom night when my dress was accidentally cut with pinking shears by Seraphine, who said she thought it was one of her old costumes. I remembered the acceptance letter to UCLA that vanished from the mail pile. Dad said maybe it got lost, but now I knew better. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the target, and they didn't even realize it. After I finished wiping down the counter and putting away the last clean glass, I returned to the dining room. Most of the guests had left or moved outside. I picked up my folded chair and carried it slowly back to the laundry room. As I leaned it against the wall, my hand brushed against the light switch. I didn't flip it. I stood there, in the dim glow of the hallway, listening to Seraphine's voice floating through the patio door. She's lucky to be around people like us. We hold this family together. That's when it hit me. Not like a scream, not like a storm. It was a quiet, brutal truth. No one ever plans to leave a family until the day they realize they were never truly invited in. By the time I stood up from the wall where I'd leaned the chair, the house had gone mostly quiet. The laughter had moved to the patio, where Seraphine and her followers, because that's what they were, posed with glasses of pink wine, toasting to her next big brand pivot. I slipped upstairs, took a quick shower, and collapsed onto my mattress, fully clothed, not even bothering to brush my hair. The next morning came too quickly. Sunlight leaked in through the slats of my blinds, landing directly across my face like it had a purpose. I sat up slowly, my body aching more from the emotional weight than from the warehouse shift the day before. I checked my phone. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages. Certainly no congratulations. Downstairs, the smell of scrambled eggs and reheated coffee drifted upward. I took a deep breath and pulled on a hoodie over the same pair of jeans I'd worn last night. As I made my way to the kitchen, the sounds of breakfast filled the air. Dishes clinking, the occasional laugh, the scraping of chairs across linoleum. "Morning, Jackie," Mom said without looking up from her plate. She was flipping through a magazine, her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Dad, already 2 cups into his coffee, held up the local paper. "Look at this. Seraphine made the Sunday lifestyle section. They're calling her a rising star in community-forward beauty." I poured myself a cup of the lukewarm coffee and sat at the far end of the table. Seraphine was scrolling her phone. "They want me to co-host a new podcast," she said between bites of toast. "It's going to be about inner beauty and growth. All that empowering stuff." Dad chuckled. "Your sister's really putting this family on the map, huh?" I nodded once, letting the comment pass like traffic in the rain. Just as I reached for a spoon, I heard Mom's voice carry clearly across the room. She was on the phone, speaker mode. Yes, Seraphine's been a huge influence on Jackie. I don't think she'd be going to Singapore if not for her sister's push. It's been such a team effort." I set the spoon down. I stared at the tablecloth, off-white with blue floral patterns, slightly stained at one edge where someone had spilled pasta sauce months ago. No one had ever washed it. They just flipped it over when company came. I stood up and walked over to her. "Mom," I said calmly, "that's not accurate. I got the job by myself. I applied. I took the courses. I interviewed. Seraphine didn't." She waved her hand in the air, still holding the phone. "It's all in the family, Jackie. You know what I mean? Don't be so touchy." Touchy. That word always settled like a splinter just under my skin. I spent 3 years building this, late-night classes, certifications, budgeting every cent. Dad lowered his paper, sipping from his mug. He didn't look at me as he said, "You talk like you're the only one doing something. What have you ever done for this family, Jackie?" The room went quiet. Seraphine didn't look up from her phone. Mom crossed her legs and flipped a page in the magazine like I'd just asked her to pass the salt. "What have you ever done for this family?" I looked around, as if someone else might step in and say something. Anything. But no one did. I was outnumbered and outvoiced in my own house. I walked to the back door, slid it open, and stepped outside into the cold air. The snow had started falling again, Just a light, steady drift that settled gently on the patio chairs and the dead rose bushes lining the fence. I didn't have gloves, so I pulled my sleeves over my hands and stood there, watching the flakes melt on contact with the wooden railing. My mind went to the nights I'd stayed late at the community college computer lab, trying to figure out Excel dashboards and Tableau visualizations because the job listing required them. I thought about the weekends I'd skipped social events to work the closing shift and then taken practice interviews on Zoom at midnight. They hadn't noticed any of it. They'd noticed when the kitchen trash hadn't been taken out, or when Seraphine's packages piled up and someone needed to sign. But they didn't see the effort. They never had. That was the first moment I felt it. Not rage, not sadness. Something quieter. A shift. Like a pressure valve hissing before it blows. Back inside, I walked up to my room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even close it fully. I sat down at my small desk, the one with the wobbly leg I'd reinforced with stacked coasters. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Not a resignation, not a confrontation, just a plan. Backup copies of my resume, a checklist for travel documents, alternate contacts, a cloud drive folder labeled contingencies. They'd never believe in me, but maybe one day they'd wish they had. Later that afternoon, Monica called. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail, then texted her back instead. Can't talk now. We'll call tonight. Things are tense. That night, dinner was leftovers. No one mentioned what had happened that morning. No one asked why I'd left the table. At 9:45, I opened my window for some air. The snow had stopped. The moon sat low, almost yellow, behind a curtain of clouds. I leaned out and whispered to no one, "I won't break." Then I pulled the window shut. I stepped back inside from the porch, my hands still stinging from the cold, the silence of that morning clinging to me like wet wool. I made my way upstairs, closed my door gently, and sat on the edge of my bed. No anger, no tears, just that quiet shift inside me, like furniture being rearranged in a house no one else lived in. By the time the afternoon sun crept through the blinds, I'd already started organizing backup folders on my laptop. I moved copies of my passport scans, my visa application PDFs, emails from the recruitment officer in Singapore, and flight confirmations into a drive folder titled "If They Try Again." I didn't expect it to come so soon. That evening, around 6:15, I got an email alert. Your visa packet has been delivered, a timestamp, a delivery signature, but I hadn't received anything. At first, I thought maybe I'd missed it at the door, or maybe the box had been left in the mailbox. I put on a pair of flats and checked. Nothing. I circled around the porch, even peeked behind the flower pots near the garage. Still nothing. Something tightened in my chest. I pulled up the tracking page again and hit refresh. The scanned signature didn't say resident. It said S. Bennett. Seraphine. I stood in the hallway for a second, mentally rehearsing. If I barged in, she'd flip it on me. If I came in too soft, she'd deny it altogether. So I took a breath, walked down the hall, and found her in the living room, half watching some Netflix show while flipping through TikTok on her phone. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice level. "Did a packet come for me today? A small envelope, official documents." She didn't even look up. "I think Mom tossed some stuff into the junk pile in the mudroom." "Did you sign for it?" She shrugged. "I don't remember. Maybe." "Seraphine," I said calmly. "My visa was in there. I'm flying out in 2 days." "Okay," she said, finally glancing up. "Then maybe check the trash." I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. The mudroom had 2 baskets, one for old mail and one for things we swore we'd recycle but never did. I dug through both. Nothing. I opened the bin under the sink. Crumpled grocery flyers, half a banana peel, and an empty vitamin bottle. No packet. The trash can had been emptied earlier that afternoon, probably right before my email came in. I turned and found Mom walking past, holding a glass of white wine and a half-folded towel. She paused just long enough to raise an eyebrow. "What's the issue now?" "I think my visa envelope was tossed out by mistake." "Well," she said, sipping, "you should always double-check with the embassy. Maybe they sent it to the wrong address." It was signed by Seraphine. She gave me a look that said, "Don't stir this up." Then she said, You know how many things get lost in the mail? Always triple check, Jackie. And just like that, she moved on. That night, I skipped dinner. I stayed in my room, called FedEx, and filed a request to reissue the packet. The agent was polite, but she sounded unsure. We can't reprint government documents, ma'am. You'll need to contact the issuing authority directly. It was nearly 10 p.m. when I finally sat down on the edge of my bed again. I was tired, but more than that, I was alert, focused in a way I hadn't been in years. As I was closing my laptop, there was a knock on my door. It was Aunt Teresa's daughter, Molly. She was in town from Kansas City for the week and had stopped by earlier for a quick visit. Hey, she whispered, holding out a small cream-colored envelope. Mom told me to give this to you privately, said it's for your trip, probably just a little cash. Congrats again, Jackie. You deserve this. I smiled, thanked her, and waited until the hallway was quiet before opening it. There was no card, no bill with my name on it, just a receipt, neatly folded, and a yellow post-it stuck to it. Thanks for covering this. You're always helpful. The receipt was from a luxury cosmetics store downtown. Over $200 worth of face serums, eye creams, and a limited edition serum kit labeled under Bennett Beauty, affiliate order. The billing address? Mine. I stared at it for a long time. It all came rushing back. Last year, Seraphine asking me to take a headshot for her sponsorship paperwork because mine looked more natural. The extra account verification email I'd dismissed, her asking casually, "What was that address again you used for your Amazon Prime?" No, this wasn't carelessness. This wasn't two sisters sharing a mailbox and a few old family bills. This was theft, calculated, subtle, and wrapped in a smile. I folded the receipt and slid it into my desk drawer. Then I pulled up my email and filed a dispute with the brand directly. If she wanted to use me for her empire, I was going to start leaving footprints. I opened a new email tab and set up a secondary address, separate from all family-linked accounts. Then I requested my visa reissue, this time sent to a PO. Box I'd set up weeks ago, just in case. I copied all my documents to a flash drive and taped it under the bottom of my suitcase. I didn't yell, I didn't storm out. But as I stared out the window again, this time at a sky overcast with clouds that never seemed to move, I whispered, not out of spite, but strategy. I'm not waiting for them to get better. I'm getting ready. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the furnace kicking on and off, the occasional creak of the old floorboards as someone upstairs turned in their bed. My thoughts didn't race. They moved methodically, like pieces on a chessboard. I had begun pulling away, quietly, deliberately. Not out of spite, out of survival. The next morning, I was brushing my hair in the hallway mirror when Mom called from the kitchen. "We're throwing you a little farewell brunch on Sunday," she said, as if it were a weather update. "Mostly family. You should look nice." I paused, halfway through a brushstroke. "That's unexpected," I said, trying to read her tone. "We figured it'd be good to send you off properly." "Nothing big," she replied, already walking away, leaving no room for questions. I should have been touched. I should have smiled. But there was a sharpness in her voice that didn't match the sweetness of her words. Sunday came 2 days later. I chose a simple navy dress and pulled my hair into a low bun. No makeup beyond lip balm. I wanted to look like myself, whatever pieces of me they hadn't already tried to trim down or paint over. Monica had offered to come with me, but I told her I'd be fine. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Call me if anything feels off." The venue wasn't our home. It was a boutique studio downtown, the kind with exposed brick and Edison bulbs. When I walked in, I was hit with the familiar smell of lavender diffusers and lemon thyme cupcakes. The room was filled with a dozen or so people, family, Seraphine's PR crew, a couple of women I vaguely remembered from high school who now seemed glued to their phones. The first thing I saw was the chalkboard sign near the refreshment table. "Good luck, Janie." Janie. They didn't even bother to get my name right. I took a slow breath and made my way to the back of the room. The entire space was covered in Seraphine's branding, Bennett Beauty. Glossy posters of her face lined the walls, tables with neatly arranged product samples, ring lights at every corner. There was a microphone on a small stage, and someone had set up a backdrop for photos. It wasn't a farewell party, it was a product launch. I scanned the room, looking for someone, anyone who might acknowledge me. Aunt Teresa waved briefly. Uncle Ron was balancing a plastic cup of mimosa in one hand and talking into his Bluetooth headset with the other. Seraphine was front and center, of course, wearing a cream blazer and pink heels, camera ready. She posed effortlessly, offering her signature half-smile to a guy holding a gimbal. She looked right past me. Then Monica appeared, slipping in quietly through the side entrance. She came straight to me, her expression cautious. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded once, even though I wasn't sure. "They said they'll play your video during dessert," she added. "The one you sent about your scholarship." That gave me something to hold on to. I'd recorded it 2 nights ago, a short, heartfelt piece about what it meant to grow up in a small town, to fight for a place beyond what people imagined for you. I spoke from the porch at twilight, with the wind softly brushing my voice. At least that part would be mine. After half an hour of mingling and vague compliments, Mom tapped a glass with a spoon and called for attention. "We're here to celebrate transitions," she began. "Growth, family, legacy." I stood near the back, hands folded, waiting. She gestured to the screen behind her. "And now, a special video to close out this moment." The lights dimmed, but the voice that came through the speakers wasn't mine. It was Seraphine. "It's been amazing supporting my little sister's growth," she said. Her tone was soft, practiced. Sometimes, all she needed was a push from those of us who believed in her potential. Photos of Seraphine and I as kids flashed on the screen, me holding a trophy, her next to me, beaming, me at a high school play, her in the front row. They'd edited my story out and written her into it. The room clapped as the video ended. Someone said, "That's so touching." I stood there, still as stone. Monica turned to me. "Did you know they changed it?" I shook my head. I didn't walk out. I didn't make a scene. I smiled. I even took a cupcake when they passed them around. Lemon time, her favorite, not mine. After the event, I helped carry boxes to the car. I told Mom it had been lovely. I hugged Seraphine and said, "You really know how to put on a show." She laughed and said, "I do what I can." When I got home, I opened my laptop and began rewriting the email I'd planned to send to friends and mentors. Not the one thanking my family, the one thanking myself. I removed every reference to support I never got. I added a new paragraph about boundaries. I called the airline to confirm my flight and upgraded my seat to one near the emergency exit. Not because I expected trouble, but because I finally understood the value of being near a door. They didn't just take my voice. They gave it away, wrapped in ribbons and false memories, and smiled like I should be grateful. But I wasn't. And I wouldn't be again. After everything, I told myself I wouldn't be surprised anymore, that I'd reached my threshold, that I could spot a lie the second it opened its mouth. But even then, I wasn't prepared for what happened the night before my flight. It was close to 10, and I was in my room reviewing my checklist. Documents double-checked, copies saved to the cloud, the small lockbox with essentials ready to go. My carry-on sat by the door, zipped tight. I had laid out a simple outfit: black jeans, a blouse, flats that wouldn't slow me down through TSA. I was mentally walking through security lines and gate numbers when I heard the knock. Not a gentle tap. A firm, slow knock, like someone had been waiting to time it just right. I opened the door to find my dad. "Come down to the basement with me for a minute," he said. I hesitated. "Why?" "Just something I want to show you. It won't take long." I followed him, my stomach tight the whole walk down the steps. The basement light flickered when he flipped the switch. A single lamp was on in the far corner, next to an old folding table we used to use for puzzles when I was a kid. Now, it was covered in dusty manila folders, a few printed spreadsheets, and an untouched glass of water. He gestured for me to sit. I stayed standing. "Listen," he started, clearing his throat. "We don't have to keep pretending. I know you're chasing something big. Singapore. Fancy title. But let's be honest, Jackie. That job's not going to last." I said nothing. "You're smart, but you're not built for corporate politics. They'll chew you up. And when that happens, what are you coming back to? He slid a file across the table toward me. Take the salon. I blinked. What? I've had it signed over for weeks. All the paperwork is ready. I kept it quiet so you'd have time to think. You've always had a good head on your shoulders. You like structure. You like helping people. And that place, he tapped the folder. That place will outlast any foreign contract. I stared at him. You're offering me the salon. If I stay. You wouldn't be staying, he said too quickly. You'd be taking over, building something solid. No rent, no debt. You walk in and it's yours. I knew a leash when I saw one, and he was trying to wrap it in velvet. What's the catch? I asked, my voice even. He shrugged like it was obvious. Just call the company. Tell them something came up. The visa paperwork hit a snag. You'll go later. That way no one's upset. You'll still be the good daughter. I didn't respond. I just turned, climbed the stairs, and left him down there, alone with his half-pitched trap and a glass of water he never touched. Upstairs, the house was mostly dark except for the glow coming from the living room window. I followed the faint light and found Mom sitting in her favorite chair by the bay window. She had a wine glass in her right hand, resting it against her knee as she stared out at the street. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Your sister's not doing as well as she lets on, she said softly. If you leave, she might spiral. She's always needed someone to stabilize her. I didn't answer. You're the stable one, Jackie. You've always been the one holding things together. Can't you just keep us balanced? I leaned against the doorframe. I've been balancing this house since I was 15. You just never noticed. She swirled the wine. That's not true. I waited for her to offer a single example. She didn't. Maybe not to you, I added. That was the last thing we said to each other that night. In my room, I didn't pack. I repacked. I removed every item from my suitcase and put it all back in, one by one. This time, reorganized, streamlined. I pulled out a plain manila folder, sealed it with double tape, and slid in my backup ID, my new passport copy, and a printout of my flight confirmation. I tucked the folder inside a zippered compartment at the bottom of my luggage, just in case. I opened my phone, disabled the shared family calendar, and set a private alarm for 3:00 a.m. No snooze, no backup. I logged into my cloud storage and updated the password. I removed access from all devices except mine. Then I backed up everything to a secure external drive, which I placed inside my purse, right between my wallet and a roll of peppermint mints. It was past midnight when I finally sat down at the edge of my bed. No one had knocked to check on me. No one had asked how I felt about any of it. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just clear. Like something inside had finally cooled enough to become sharp. They'd offered me gifts wrapped in guilt, legacy packaged as love, responsibility disguised as praise, and for the first time, I didn't bite. I'd barely closed my suitcase when there was a soft knock at my bedroom door. It was past midnight. The house had long settled into that eerie stillness, where every sound feels sharper, every whisper heavier. Jackie? Seraphine's voice came through the crack in the door, sugar-coated and suspiciously light. Hey, could you help me move something real quick downstairs? I just need a backdrop shifted for my morning shoot. Won't take more than 5 minutes, I promise. I turned toward the door but didn't respond right away. My instinct told me to say no. But something about her tone, too sweet, too rehearsed, made me curious. I wanted to know how far she would go. I stood up, slid on my hoodie, and followed her down the hallway. We walked quietly, past the living room where a half-empty wine glass sat untouched. The glow from the porch light cast long shadows on the floor. She opened the basement door, holding it open like a concierge. I just need you to pull the stand while I slide the panel out, she said, already descending the stairs. I followed slowly, cautious but steady. When we reached the bottom, she flipped the switch. The light buzzed above, and a single photography panel leaned against the far wall, untouched. Where's the rest of the equipment? I asked. She didn't answer. Before I could fully turn around, the door slammed shut behind me. Then the unmistakable click of the deadbolt. I rushed up the stairs, rattling the knob. Seraphine? Open the door! Her voice came through calmly, with that same condescending rhythm she used on brand calls. "You'll always be just a local, Jackie. Stop trying to be something you're not." "This is illegal," I snapped. My hands were gripping the knob so hard my knuckles ached. "Call the cops," she said with a chuckle. "Oh, wait, you'll miss your flight by then." "Oops." I could hear her footsteps retreating. No rush, no fear, like she'd just taken out the trash and was moving on with her night. For a long time, I didn't move. I stood at the bottom of those stairs, hand on the knob, head resting against the door. The silence down there wasn't like upstairs. It was thicker, almost physical. No windows, just concrete walls and the low hum of the water heater in the corner. Eventually, I backed away and sat on the old love seat we kept down there from when my grandmother lived with us. The cushions were flattened, the fabric torn slightly at the edges. I leaned back and closed my eyes. That's when the rest started to fall into place. A week earlier, I'd backed up my credentials for the visa, scanned everything, transcripts, certificates, recommendations. I remembered noticing that my GPA had been entered incorrectly, lower by a full point. I'd assumed it was a glitch, but now, in that cold basement, I saw the full picture. The resume I had submitted was clean. The one attached to my formal application, the one Mom insisted she help with, was different. The formatting was off. My job titles were outdated. There was even a gap year listed that I never authorized. They'd tampered with it, watered it down. The sabotage wasn't just emotional, it was administrative. Still seated, I unzipped the ankle pouch strapped beneath my jeans. Inside was a small burner phone I'd bought 2 months ago, still charged, still ready. I powered it on, checked the signal. 1 bar, enough. I pulled out the emergency charger Monica had given me last Christmas, already preloaded with power. As I plugged it in, I opened the video app and hit record. "If you're seeing this," I began. I didn't disappear. I wasn't flaky. I wasn't unstable. I was locked in my family's basement. By blood, by name, by fear. I paused, then continued. This was never about rebellion. This was about leaving safely. And if you find this video before I board my flight, know that I tried. I really tried to leave quietly. I set the video to auto-upload in 3 hours. If I didn't manually cancel it, it would post everywhere. Cloud, social, contacts. Not as vengeance. As insurance. I searched around the basement for anything useful. No exits, no tools, just a dusty treadmill, a stack of old tax boxes, and a half-deflated exercise ball that squeaked when I nudged it aside. I wrapped myself in the throw blanket that still smelled faintly like cinnamon, left over from winter storage. I checked my watch. 3:12 a.m. My flight was in 3 hours. My ride, Monica, was scheduled to arrive at 4:30 sharp. The walls felt like they were pressing in. But I didn't cry. I counted the steps from the door to the wall. I timed the water heater's clicking cycle. I practiced my breathing. I whispered my confirmation code for the flight until it became a prayer. Around 3:47, I heard a noise upstairs. Not footsteps, a low murmur. Then silence again. I went back to the love seat and sat still, eyes open, back straight. This wasn't about missing a plane anymore. This was about reclaiming my story, before they rewrote the ending without me. The air in the basement had shifted. It was subtle, like the moment before a thunderstorm when everything holds its breath. I had been sitting still for what felt like hours, body stiff, mind alert, when I heard it. Footsteps, soft, unhurried, but deliberate. Then the sound that nearly undid me, a key turning in the lock. The door creaked open slowly, letting in a slice of hallway light. My eyes adjusted fast. "Jackie?" It was Monica. She was out of breath, hair still damp from the drizzle outside, wearing her worn navy hoodie and clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Something didn't feel right." I stared at her for a second, blinking hard. Then I stood, legs unsteady from sitting so long, and walked toward the light. "You look like hell," she whispered. "I've had better nights." She stepped aside to let me out, glancing behind her. The house was silent again, like it had swallowed the crime whole. "Grab whatever you need," she said quietly. "We're not staying." In my room, I shut the door and locked it. Then I reached under the bed for my suitcase. Everything was still packed, untouched. I double-checked the pouch with my ID and backup credentials, still there. As I zipped it closed, Monica sat on the edge of my desk, scrolling through her phone. "We're not leaving just yet," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "I want you to see something first." She handed me the phone. There, on the screen, was a security cam app. Footage from a neighbor's driveway showing Seraphine pulling me down into the basement the night before. The timestamp was clear. Her voice even clearer. "I set this up a while back when your mom accused the gardener of stealing packages," Monica explained. "It's been active since. Guess who forgot it exists?" I didn't say anything. I just pressed play again. From the hallway, we heard a muffled voice, probably Seraphine, somewhere near the kitchen. Monica and I locked eyes. "I'm not done," she said. We crept into the study where Seraphine usually worked. Her laptop was open, screensaver still bouncing between photos of her latest product launch. Monica sat down, typed quickly, and the screen lit up. We scrolled through open tabs, applications in my name, edits to my resume with missing credentials, even an email draft to my would-be employer requesting a postponement due to family instability. Monica started screen recording everything. "This is evidence," she muttered. "It's not just mean. It's malicious." I backed up the files to my own drive and took pictures on my phone, just in case. The minutes felt slow, thick with adrenaline and restraint. When we returned to the hallway, the house was still quiet. I picked up my suitcase again, my passport clipped visibly to the side. We were almost at the door when a thought struck me. I needed to know. I called the hotel I had booked near the airport, a quiet boutique place with early shuttle service and blackout curtains. My reservation had been made a month ago. A woman answered. "Hi," I said. "This is Jacqueline Bennett. I'm confirming a room for tonight. It should already be paid for." There was a pause. "Oh," she said. "I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett. That reservation was canceled 2 days ago." "Canceled?" "Yes. It says it was a family emergency. The request came through online. We refunded it fully." "Who canceled it?" She hesitated. "Let me check the note. It says Seraphine Bennett confirmed via email." I closed my eyes. "She said you were unstable," the woman added, more softly. "That you'd had a breakdown." I thanked her and hung up. "Still think you're going to leave quiet?" Monica asked. I shook my head. I walked over to the kitchen, set the phone on speaker, and called Seraphine's number. She answered on the second ring, too cheerful. "Hey, little globetrotter," she said, as if none of this had happened. "You want me to disappear?" I said calmly. "But I won't." A pause, then, "Excuse me? I've got more receipts than you have followers, and video, and timestamps, and your little edits to my resume, all saved." Her tone shifted. "Jackie, you're not thinking clearly." "Oh, I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." "I'll call the police." "Please do," I said. I'd love to explain how I was locked in a basement with cameras around the house and a live-streaming sister holding the key. Silence. Then, "You're doing this for attention. You always were the jealous one." I hung up. Monica and I walked out the front door just as the sun was beginning to rise. The street was wet with the night's rain. Her car waited at the curb, headlights dimmed. As we pulled away from the house, I looked back one last time, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted to remember exactly what I was walking away from. The sun was barely over the rooftops when Monica and I pulled into her driveway. Neither of us said much during the ride. The silence between us wasn't heavy, it was deliberate, focused. We were done surviving. Now, it was about clarity. I went straight to the guest room, opened my bag, and pulled out the external drive I'd backed everything onto the night before. I connected it to Monica's laptop. The screen lit up with folders labeled Resume Edits, Credentials, and Basement Record. We weren't looking for a fight. We were documenting the one they started. Monica was in the kitchen, pouring coffee when the knock came. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't timid either. I opened the door. Mrs. Alvarez stood there, wrapped in her old tan shawl, her hair pinned back in a way that reminded me of the church choir photos hanging in her hallway. She didn't greet me, just held out a USB stick. "I've lived next to your family for 22 years, she said, her voice gravelly but clear. "I've seen too much. This time, I recorded it." I took the drive from her hand, our fingers brushing. She didn't wait for me to thank her, just turned and walked back across the lawn without looking back. Inside, I plugged the drive into the second port on Monica's laptop. We watched the clip together. It was all there, the hallway camera from Mrs. Alvarez's front porch caught everything. The moment Seraphine knocked on my door, my hesitation, my following her down the steps, then the basement door closing. And that click? Even worse, Mom in the frame, standing in the kitchen with a glass of wine in her hand, watching, doing nothing. When Seraphine turned from the door, she smirked, lifted her phone to her ear, and said, clear as day, "Handled." Monica didn't say a word. She reached for her phone and began uploading. We drafted the post carefully. No fluff, no hashtags, just facts, video, timestamp, screenshots of the altered resume and fake hotel cancellation. A note from me. This is what happened to me, from the people who should have protected me, not for drama, for truth. We hit publish, and waited. By noon, it had 17,000 views. By 2 p.m., it was at 80,000. At 4:26, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Monica refreshed the browser. 1 million. The headlines started flooding in before dinner time. Woman locked in basement by family days before moving abroad for dream job. Just a local goes global. I got a call from the university's director of admissions. "We saw the video. Your story matters. Your seat is still waiting." Then a second call from a production assistant at a morning news show. Then another, from someone with TEDx. I didn't return the news calls, but I took the one from the lawyer. The papers were ready by nightfall. Unlawful restraint, defamation, tampering with personal documents, all filed, quietly, thoroughly. I didn't want money. I wanted legal distance, a no-contact order, an end. And still, when the phone buzzed again and Seraphine's name showed up on the screen, I picked up. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted to listen. "Jackie," she said, breathless, "you can't keep this up. This is destroying everything. My brand, our family. It was already destroyed," I said. I just held up a mirror. "You don't understand. There are contracts, sponsors." "I understand exactly," I cut her off. "You've been monetizing lies for years. You finally got called out. This time, you don't get to edit the narrative." She paused. "People are sending me death threats." "That's awful," I said, and meant it. "But it's not my fault. You're blowing this out of proportion." "You locked me in a basement," I said calmly. "You submitted a fake resume to ruin my chances. You had my hotel canceled, and my mother stood there and watched." She went silent, then finally, a whisper. "I didn't think you'd actually go." "That's the problem," I said. "You thought I needed your permission." That night, Monica and I sat on the couch, the TV muted, the laptop glowing in front of us. Notifications poured in, comments from strangers, survivors, people I'd never met who said, "I see myself in this." The final twist? A message from TEDx. They'd confirmed me as a speaker for their international segment, the talk's title. When they locked the door, I found my voice. It wasn't revenge, it was restoration. I sent one last email, legal, clean, addressed to Seraphine and Verena. "You don't owe me an apology, and I no longer owe you my silence. This isn't about family anymore. This is about freedom." My seat on the plane was by the window. I remember that because I asked for it specifically. Something about seeing the sky one last time before I left the place that taught me how deep silence could cut. The cabin lights dimmed as we began taxiing, and I looked down at the phone in my hand. No texts, no missed calls, no "come home" or even "safe travels." Just Monica's message from half an hour earlier. "You're doing the right thing, and I'm proud of you." That, and the small envelope Mrs. Alvarez had handed me at the curb, tucked between my boarding pass and passport. I hadn't opened it until we were in the air. Inside was a note in her neat cursive. "You did what I never could. That makes you the strong one." I folded it carefully and slipped it into my journal. Somewhere over the Pacific, I finally let my shoulders drop. I had left the town. I had walked out of that house. I had survived their silencing. But the scars were mine to keep. Singapore greeted me with monsoon rain and a heat that felt like it could melt bone. The air was thick, foreign, alive. I stepped out of the terminal with my bag rolling behind me and the address of my housing printed on a sheet of paper. I didn't have anyone waiting at arrivals, but for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone there. My apartment was small, just enough room for a bed, desk, and a tiny kitchen nook, but it was mine. Mine in a way that didn't have history written into the walls or guilt tucked behind every cabinet. Work started 3 days later. I showed up early, greeted everyone with a quiet smile, and sat at a desk overlooking the city skyline. The organization assigned me to oversee scholarship outreach, helping young girls from rural communities apply for higher education. The irony wasn't lost on me. A month in, one of the local magazines interviewed me for their Women of Impact section. The writer, a kind-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair, asked, "What gave you the strength to leave?" I thought about lying, about saying something poetic. Instead, I said, "Because I realized staying would have made me forget who I was before they convinced me I was small." The article ran with a headline I didn't expect: "The Woman Who Walked Through Fire." Then the TEDx clip aired. I kept the talk simple, my voice steady. They said I was just a local, that the world wasn't mine to reach. They locked the door, so I built another one. 3 million views, then 5, then I stopped counting. One afternoon, our HR department forwarded me a letter. It came from a lawyer back home. "We've lost Seraphine's partnerships. Our finances are in ruins. We miss you. Come home. Help us." There was no apology, no ownership, just need, wrapped in familial obligation. I didn't respond, but I did make a few anonymous calls, paid off their past due utilities, covered a portion of Mom's medical bills I found buried in a community assistance fund listing. Then I mailed a single envelope, unsigned, addressed to the house. Inside was a slip of paper that read, "I don't hate you, but I'll never trust you to love me again." Some days, I still pause when I hear doors lock behind me. I still flinch when someone praises me too quickly, wondering if it's earned or if they're building a future debt. But I sleep deeply. I wake up not with dread, but with direction. I mentor a student now, a bright girl from the northern countryside who dreams of being an engineer. Her handwriting is messy, her ideas are wild, and her questions never stop. She reminds me of me, before everything dulled the shine. Every now and then, someone back home will message me through a mutual friend. They say you changed. I did. I changed the rules. I changed my address. I changed the ending. And every time someone dares to say I was just a local, I smile. Not bitterly, not cruelly, just clear. And I answer, that's not even close to all I am. I didn't escape my family to spite them. I left to remember who I was before they made me forget. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who try to cage you. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about choosing your own freedom, even when it means walking away from everything familiar. What would you do if your family tried to erase your future? If this story moved you, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next powerful family story we bring to light.